RegTech boils down to, do you have trust in your partners, and do the regulators have trust in you as an institution? That's number one. You build that confidence based on good processes, good data, and good people, and then results that you can repeat. So RegTech might come in as a solution to solve a specific problem that is highly manual. I think that's where RegTech plays. It's niche, and as we deploy in our environment, the FSDF environment, and start layering things on top of it and integrating them together, the confidence that that matches that because it came from the same source, the lineage and the connectivity there, it's hard to argue with that. You have to prove it and repeat it.
RegTech is totally this evolving area. It can mean many things to many people. Some of the challenges I see as we face the problem at BMO is, what data do we need when, and how do we get it? Do we have a data model? Who's driving that data model? Who owns the data? You know, because this concept of data and data governance is so foundational to the what you build and how you build it. And then on top of that foundation, then you start deploying these utilities or using some of these big data tools. And a lot of the names we saw on the screen earlier were just tools that you use or you put to make sense out of the big data. You know, years ago we'd have to map every data element manually, and now you can just use a utility to do that. Years ago you'd have to encrypt your data using hardware appliances, and now you can do that with a click of a button in the cloud. So the world is changing fast, but I don't think the banks are necessarily keeping up with that evolving pace because we're still constrained to a lot of our legacy payment systems. So when you see a lot of the emblems of the firms named on the page, it's that they're coming to this market saying, they're leapfrogging the way banks do this and saying, well, we're introducing a more robust or more quick or timely process. So they're gaining a bit of competitive advantage over the banks. But what the banks still have the core competitive advantage is we're highly regulated, we're trusted, and we have very solid systems and years of experience and the talent that really helps us to be who we are and what we are. So in the AML space, as we face these challenges, we have to really focus on those things that we're good at and say, how can we get better? And how can we continue to meet our regulatory obligations while at the same time looking at these other areas on the side or in special projects to help us innovate. And quickly, these systems and these technologies that we see, the world of cryptocurrency, the world of blockchain, the world of faster payments and real-time payments, they're at our doorstep. They're here already. If you don't think you have that in your bank, you do. And are your controls, is your data environment robust enough to deal with that? These are some of the core questions we're asking. And I'll take it one step further because we did talk about the regulatory environment a bit earlier. In the regulatory environment, what we see is the regulations are chasing this evolution. They are not leading the evolution, they're chasing the evolution. And I'm not sure they're ever going to catch up. So we almost have to think like a regulator with regard to our own data, our own utilities and own use cases, and build in what we expect to be controls around things that might be unwieldy on the surface. And especially in these areas where everything is moving, including data, to a more decentralized, and that's what Hadoop is basically. But we're seeing decentralization of payments, we're seeing decentralization of our data, and we're seeing the disambiguation of all the products and services that we have traditionally held together as a bank, as a cluster for our customers, are being attacked from many different directions in ways that force us to be more competitive. And until you get your AML right, until you get your compliance right, you're going to be at a disadvantage. But if you can get those things right, then it truly puts you at a competitive advantage to get the job done. You know, we had a problem to solve, and that is how do we address risk in our customer base across many different platforms. And one of the first immediate things that we identified as the opportunity was we need a strong data model. We need a strong data model so we can understand where the risk is and how we get on top of it. So that's why we went with certain solutions to address the problem. And that since then has led to the opportunity to to bring on these additional utilities on top of it from a fintech space. And so now we're looking at concepts like AI, RPA, robotics process automation, to really help not only with managing the data, but also delivery of the data. We had a significant portion of our time and processes spent just on collecting data from all the legacy sources. And we've been able to deploy robotics to bring automation to a lot of that process in ways that help us deliver value and reduce costs for our overall operation. Everything's growing, and we're being asked constantly to do more and more, but the ability to focus on and find tools and techniques to drive that process efficiency is really the leverage point that we seek after from a cost management standpoint. So in the fintech space in particular, the availability of a lot of these external data sources that we're now able to link to in a way to enrich our data is proving quite valuable. It helps us find risk in our processes a lot more quickly. Our ability to deploy techniques of AI and just good data management and data quality management to consolidate alerts that we are reviewing in the AML space is helping significantly as well. We've been able to reduce the volume of alerts by 30%, not just by, we haven't eliminated stuff, but we've just been able to consolidate it, compress it, and look at it more holistically and more efficiently. And in the third area, I would say, is that, you know, KYC is KYC. We've had the Wolfsburg group just recently introduce, you know, a couple hundred more questions that we're all going to have to answer in dealing with our corporate partners. So we're looking at the industry too for solutions. How do we get governments to move you know, toward repositories? How do we get consortiums established to have legal authority to share information across different institutions? These are things that are real important as we look forward.
If you bring data in for a single purpose, is there any way we can utilize it for a second and then a third and then a fourth purpose? And that led to the construction of a product called the Financial Services Data Foundation, which is what the gentleman here referred to earlier. All of the OFSA applications sit on top of this data model, and all of the applications are constructed using a set of frameworks that are common across OFSA. And the advantage that this gives us is if there is any new technology that comes up, we just introduce it into the framework, and then all the applications that are sitting on top just get to utilize that framework. And one of those new technologies has been, you know, machine learning, graph analytics, and soon RPA, parts of Oracle, and make all of those technologies available to the OFSA suite, right? In the same vein, I go outside of Oracle, and as an example for regulatory reporting, we decided to partner with a vendor called Lombard Risk about 3 years ago, because we were not in the business of, you know, regulatory reporting, the last mile reporting that is done. We were in the business of the engines that generate the data that needs to be reported and the data gathering capability, right, this data foundation capability. So we partnered with Lombard. We will partner with other vendors. Numerix is another vendor that we partnered with for the capital market space, for the market risk space, for models. We are also going to be partnering with another vendor for robotic process automation. Right now, these are tools, an RPA vendor that we'll end up partnering with. But we will take that tool and we would make it very specific to the end use cases that are the OFSA applications.
I mean, there's tons of things I want to be able to hang on top of our data environment. You know, you do have that solid platform of a data environment, but think of the world of the future as like an app store where we're going to pick and choose what we need and integrate it at our points of risk relative to our own customized product set and customer use case. And that's really where we're headed, I think, in this world. The old vertical software in a box solutions don't work anymore. We've got to break that apart and create a bunch of horizontal nodes that we can, I can put machine learning in here or risk scoring in the middle between these two applications seamlessly. And that's what I'm looking for as a customer and as a professional in this space.
If you're in here and you have some experience in regulation, you know, number one, it's always going to change. Number two, it's going to come at you faster than you possibly can expect that you can be prepared. And you need flexibility to prepare and adapt and interpret what the heck they're asking anyway. So all that being said, the environments that I've had experience with and what we're working with right now, Hadoop is a good example where I can do about whatever I want to. I've spin up a Cloudera workbench, for example, a data science workbench, and say, hey, here's your data. Go try to solve this problem, figure it out. But eventually, regulations start to solidify and become routine. Those of us in the U.S. that do call report, for example, it's pretty much the same thing. They'll have a change once or twice a year, but you adapt to it. Then it becomes a packaged good type thing. But it's all the other things that are constantly going to come at us, and it's the unknowns. So you need both very structured and predictable, and you need flexible. So a more open environment is the key. And to me, I still think that the data is the core, but the flexibility around it is critical.
You think about where the regulators are headed. Their expertise in data integration, and all the reports that they're asking for these days look no further than what all the banks had to do with CCAR and markets reporting. We're giving them thousands and millions of points of information, and they're able to apply their own risk analytics. And not only that, they can look cross-institution and say, here's a common theme of risk, and then they come back to you and they say, what did you know? Did you know about that? What have you done about it? And you better be prepared and on top of your data so you can get to the answer. At least if you don't know, you better be able to go back to your desk, make a phone call, and get that answer within, the next couple of hours, because that's the pace in which we have to respond and show that we're on top of our risks.